Lila, and Teeps, and Flora, and me. Rocket.
Boost! Fire!
This has happened before.
Advisor.
Well, you've seen my 20 NES games. Now it's time for their 20 16-bit successors. The Super Nintendo was actually the first 16-bit console I've encountered before its arch rival, the Sega Genesis. And this was actually the reigning champion of our first ever console war. The SNES was jam-packed with many classics, and technology and motivation were their top priority. Because now, we are playing with superpower. Same rules apply here, and I'll try and keep it as less repetitive as I can by limiting to one per franchise. Whether there be from my parents' mom and pop shops, or at home, here are the 20 games that made the SNES my all-time nostalgic console. Time to surpass the blast processing. Barely qualifying for this top 20 is the Kemco Racing Classic Top Gear. Not to be confused, and it was way before the British series of the same name. Ever since I was 6 years old, this auto racing title always grabbed my attention. Just like with RC Pro-Am, my dad was a pro with this game, hardly ever being disqualified until he got to the more trickier countries. We actually start in the US, specifically in one of my desert levels, Las Vegas. And as we pass each course, we progress through 8 different countries. This was the game that got me intrigued with geography, unlike many consumers who'd rather prefer the trivial Carmen Sandiego, along with an atlas I had at the time too. While the game is fantastic with presentation and got me inspired in learning about other countries, this game's far from easy. This game features your choice on whether to be at miles per hour or kilometers per hour, which the latter I highly recommend. You also need to pick whether or not your car should be manual or automatic, and being I don't drive, I can hardly tell the difference. There too are 4 cars to choose from, although few can consume fuel rather quickly. That's the complicated thing, going to the pits without accidentally passing it or running out. We'll also have nail-biting time for your opponents to pass you like in Days of Thunder. The difficulty can be vindictive at times, much like in Shadowgate, especially in the latter countries with all those hairpin turns at going over 100 miles per hour. And you must use nitros wisely, as we only get to use 3 of them without any power-ups, which only the sequel has. Plus there are weird passwords to memorize or write down, such as the bizarre moon bath. And it's one of those that abuse the old ranking out system. Fun facts, this game was renamed as Top Racer in Japan, and it too shared remixed music tracks from its predecessor, the Lotus series for the Amiga and Mega Drive. It was also remarkable for its time, just auto-racing rapidly with other computer racers in a split screen, even before Mario Kart's existence! With the strict difficulty, the challenging environments with the sharp turns and darkness at times, an addictive soundtrack, and fascinating locations, it's no wonder I sometimes fantasize it as a predecessor to even the F-Zero series, thus starting my Super Nintendo repertoire. While approximately 90% of consumers would rather choose Chrono Trigger for a time-traveling adventure and RPG, I usually turn towards Evo. It's just one of those random role-plays I saw as a kid when I watched my older sis play them, along with several others on this list. It's just one of those life-changing games I was grateful to see and play. And it was one of the most intriguing entries made by Enix and Quintet before they'd been squandered by Square. This can also be a gorgeous history lesson as it highlights many eras that I even wish Chronica or Lord Liu Kang would tread. This was actually based on the PC Japanese game The 4 Billion Year Story, as it spans a billion years of our world's history. Way more than just the prehistoric age. We're set on a quest run by Gaia, the daughter of the sun, representative of Earth, and one of my favorite chronokinetics, as she provides the player the ability to make multiple evolutions into various species, starts as just a fish, and eventually transforms into more complex organisms as he levels up, and adapts to many eras, eventually becoming Gaia's immortal partner. For a 1992 game, this was just one of those that stretched the system to its limits, packed with many worlds to explore, around 50 evolutions to use and change rapidly, with the cost of Evo points, before Pokemon and Digimon bastardized it, and maybe teaching a thing or two on how our world worked way back. Despite how immersive this game is, it can be very tedious, hence the low rating. I think it's an early example aside from Final Fantasy of the trope, God dang it, and its complexity has shunned me out a lot. At least the SNES version's more lenient, providing continues after we fail. With a vast repertoire of transformations, diverse environments, ever-changing time periods, and some education in between, I'd recommend this underrated classic to any adventurous consumer. Chronica, Lavos, nor the Final Fantasy freaks didn't know what they're missing. If you're a longtime viewer of mine, then you definitely know I still support the underappreciated point-and-click 3D adventure, Drakkhen. I even mentioned this in multiple countdowns, such as underappreciated games, swamps, or hydrokinetics, or creepiest enemies, just to name a few. Ever since I was around 5 or 6 years old, I saw my older sis play it randomly, like with several other RPGs, and the music, atmosphere, and sometimes these weird cries from each monster got me intrigued. As I'd stated in the past, this other Kemco classic was released during the SNES's infancy, when the 16-bit war was just been declared, and you play as a quartet team consisting of a fighter, scout, magician, and priest with customizable stats, equipment, and skills that not even the early Final Fantasy games hadn't mastered yet, even before 5 and 6's existence. Your mission is to unite the 8 tiers from each of the kingdoms located within Drakkhen Island, where the wars between humans and dragons had raged endlessly, creating hybrids known as Drakkhen and brewing a tricky quest on finding trusted allies, gathering powerful weapons and spells, and restoring peace to the land. I'm beginning to understand the dragons' plight, as they're often persecuted by paranoid humans like us. It's a low rating since the game can be complicated to work with, and sometimes the creepiness factor can keep even youngsters at bay. Even though this classic had a so-called sequel of Dragon View, it never had a re-release for Wii's Virtual Console, nor Switch Online. So my underrated opinion still stands. Kemco has done a lot of hitters, such as this, so it definitely deserves more credit when praise is due. You know, this quest, as well as the dragon hybrids, always takes me back to Mortal Kombat Armageddon, where Cairo has been exploited by Dagon mixing his DNA to make half-human, half-dragon hybrids for his slaver's accursed Red Dragon clan. I think Drakkhen inspired Midway to do just that, if only. Whenever I worked on my 5th Mortal Kombat fanfic, it always takes me back to Drakkhen, or vice versa. It's so astounding! Regardless, I'd recommend Drakkhen to any retro consumer, though it's too steep to be a newbie's RPG. Still, every factor takes me back, and for the past 4 decades, nothing can possibly replicate its basic, though unique and medieval charm. Just as Dr. Mario and Yoshi were my favorite NES puzzle games, Tetris Attack is my all-time favorite SNES puzzle game. This is the tranquil kind of SNES puzzle game you can just relax to ease your minds with all the dazzling designs and cutesy characters straight out of the Yoshi series. Perfect for novices and veterans alike. Ironic, since it's named after the back-breaking Tetris. The player uses a cursor and rearranges columns or rows to make matches, which cause the blocks to dissipate on the battlefield. More puzzle blocks appear, and the player must keep up before the rows should reach the top of the screen. Much as with the aforementioned NES titles, or just a combo of both. Still though, I find this as the type of game to just mellow out, where any consumer, old or young, can play, and I just chill out, instead of grinding their nerves. My main has always been Yoshi, and I really like the other colorful characters they'd chosen, such as Piranha Plant, Lakitu, Poochie, and others. There too are a variety of modes, such as the usual story campaign, which requires you to progress to the end, endless mode, which it says on the tin, timed mode, which challenges you to clear boards within 2 minutes, versus mode, which you can play competitively, and stage clear that requires you to remove all blocks outright. What's strange is that it somehow has the Tetris brand, and when it was released for the Switch Online, it was renamed to its Japanese brand. They should have just called it Yoshi Attack instead. This game sold incredibly well, that there were a plethora of sequels and remakes, most notably a copycat with the popular Pokemon Puzzle League. You know, this game was originally supposed to have fairies instead of characters from the challenging Yoshi's Island. Despite it being a late game within a month before the N64's inception, even. And a lot of critics even stated it was better that way and labeled it as superior. I mean, just take a look at how I defended this overhated installment. Sometimes being inspired by Mario Kart is just the better choice, even being a successor to that mouse and his motorcycle. Biker Mice from Mars rocks and rides into 16. It was like finding a gold mine. Another game found out of curiosity from my parents' third shop. This actually whizzed into my life before I knew its tie-in animated series existed. At least not till several years later. This was how I was introduced to the trio of the Martian mice. Throttle, Moto, and Vinny challenged the Plutarchians, Lawrence Limburger, and Dr. Carbuncle, along with their toxic associate Grease Pit, in death-defying races through Chicago and beyond. Unfortunately, as fun and high-octane as the game is, it doesn't explain much. Konami did an okay job, but I'd recommend watching the series first before delving it, contrary to what I did. It's as shameful as a sudden flat tire that this classic hadn't been brought up much. The environments are colorful and engaging as far as SNES games go. The crafts are often easy to control. It provides a lot of fast-paced and wild circuits, whether in a solo or multiplayer campaign. And just like a successor to Mario Kart, each racer can use a variety of random, unorthodox items at the end of each lap and disable many enemies, even having their own signature moves and stats to make them stand out, such as Moto's brute force, Vinny's light and nimble handling, Throttle's balanced control in conjunction with his tornado shot, even as far as temporarily turning into a petite, weak mutant. Variety is a slice of life here while racing through different environments, and there's even a repair shop in between battles to customize your craft. The passcodes in the Coal Tar cache can be hefty, though. Just like with Gyrus, this is one of my all-time favorite go-to Konami titles. Way more than even Gradius 3, UN Squadron, or even Contra 3. This was the decent starting point on making me love the Biker Mice. If only the 2006 version was just as good. This series deserves to get with the times. Make a Marvel movie showcasing them. I'd be happy like a mouse staying away from the stinky cheese. F-freaking-Zero. One of the launch titles released for the Beijing Brick next to Super Mario World and Pilot Wings, Miyamoto made another innovative racing title aside from Excite Bike. Taking place in 2560, the destructive anti-gravity automobiles and tournament began, and it spawned a very tragic legacy. It's still restricted to just 4 crafts, featuring the Batman-inspired Blue Falcon, the speedy Golden Fox, the balanced Wild Goose, and the aggressive Fire Stingray. There are 3 leagues to choose from inspired by chess pieces, with the Knight, Queen, and King leagues, with Master unlocked by perfect means. Only 8 tracks are featured in practice with elusive hacks featuring them all. By completing each lap, you earn up to 3 nitros giving you temporary boosts. And it's mostly low on account of its spiking difficulty, the pinball physics, how your opponents never die, and how it abuses rubber band AI, and hair-ripping ranking out system in which Mario Kart and others ripped off. I raced into my parents' second shop, with only just the cartridge, so I've never learnt anything about holding the down button while soaring over large gaps, hence finding the large gap in Whiteland or the stunt in Port Town to be virtually impossible. Nor was I aware on who the pilots were till Smash Bros, and never experiencing its tie-in comic. The 16-bit synchronized music and graphics always feels nostalgic, especially with the serenading environment of Port Town, or the dazzling oceans in Big Blue, or the beautiful though deadly aesthetic in Whiteland. It might not have kick-started my F-Zero timeline, not till GX and GP Legend, but there were quite a few factors included, such as the aforementioned Whiteland incident, and most of its tumultuous circuits. This not only launched one of my favorite video game franchises, but this was a secret weapon during the 16-bit invasion, as it utilized the Mode 7 capability smoothly, something the Genesis lacked. This was inspired by Batman, as Captain Falcon was supposed to be the SNES's mascot, and his vehicle was based on the Batmobile, even being as a masked bounty hunter. Shigeru and Koji were at their prime in these days, and it shows in their products. F-Zero's true meaning was innovation. If only we were to have a remaster someday highlighting the horrific accident, and bring the series back from the dead. Be damned, F-Zero 99! Long after the 8-bit Rockman was put to sleep, a new generation arose. Advancements were made to create the next generation Blue Bomber, and thanks to Dr. Kane as well as Capcom, Mega Man X was activated. With technology on the rise, evolution was their top priority, having Rockman be put into hibernation, which eventually awakened and transitioned into the rogue Reploid-turned-dictator Sigma. X was Dr. Light's final creation before his death, with a more sentient counterpart giving it the option of free will, thus introducing the Reploids, who were peaceful robots with the same mindset, eventually turning hostile, which kick-started the Mavericks. And Mega Man X was just the declaration between them. Both the Reploids and Mavericks were more in-depth and interesting compared to the stale Robot Masters, as they're often based on animals with distinctive features, having more detailed environments, and sometimes deeper motives like betrayal, which the Man-Bots lacked. Lest we forget the memorable characters like X, Sigma, Dr. Kane, and especially the badass Zero, which were crucial selling points, aside from riveting 90s rock, sharper and deeper tones, versatile gameplay, and accelerating levels. And the devs were kind enough to give us an introductory stage. Hell, X was the first of his kind to introduce the wall jump long before Mario in his N64 debut. Remember that! With all those intriguing factors, creative freedom, and a fresh restart, Mega Man X was the golden standard for Capcom, aside from Super Castlevania, of course. and it made me a casual fan praising the X series, with my faves being here and X4, till it had falls from grace afterwards. Unlike many contenders, this wasn't encountered randomly like at my parents' shops, nor at home, not even from a former friend, but rather from two content creators I used to admire, being the so-called Great Clement, before he became egotistical, and Itionobo, aka the Tree's Apprentice, who's no longer active. These two were the thresholds on me getting into the series, even starting by incorporating elements into my Cowboy Bebop sessions. Mega Man X was just a breath of fresh air from the repetitiveness classic Mega Man entailed. I'd recommend seeing its tie-in prequel film, The Day of Sigma, before delving in, if you want to follow along. I'm usually no fan of the Big Bots series, so Mega Man X drove me as one of the most innovative platformers, aside from Mario and Sonic, the 16-bit era offers. Of course, one of the crazy parody fighting games has to be on that list. Clayfighter was just one of several gems I'd found at random, and became instant TKOs. Utilizing digitalized sprites from claymation models, this game was introduced to younger audiences that couldn't access more violent titles, like Mortal Kombat or Streets of Rage. But this was just intriguing, to say the least. We get to play as several brawlers who were all exposed to radiation by a Cliterian meteor, and each have a motive to become king of the circus. Whether it be my mains such as the awesome toxokinetic Blob, the animated fructose freak Taffy, the possessive Ichabod Clay, or the basic cryokinetic Badmr. Frosty. Yeah, they made creative rip-offs of Frosty the Snowman, the actual Blob, even a zany clown named Bonker.
Yeah, totally nuts.
Even a Mimicker rip-off at the end. This was just one of those childlike and addicting finds I'd had since I was 5, around the same time as Mortal Kombat and several others at my parents' second shop. And just like another certain contender, I couldn't decide which one I'd beaten first. It was embarrassingly on easy, but it was certainly one of the first. Still, I've never seen it mentioned on any sort of countdowns, and being how obscure it is, I had mentioned in on several of my lists. Whether childlike, cheesy, silly, or simply, I wished it was mentioned more often. Just a funky fighting game I wished would appeal the masses, and others along the way. If only Interplay can stay afloat. Zombies Ate My Neighbors, one of my GOAT games for the Halloween spirit, as well as an escape from the mundane undead trends, and supporting the long-forgotten. Created by Lucasfilms, this was a nice distraction from the usual Star Wars titles. This basic run-and-gun game decimating the undead was extraordinary, and it was comedically based on the horror genre. Which is even better since I wasn't a fan of horror anyway, even by today's standards. You can play as either Julie or Zeke, whom the latter was my main, Or you can play co-op and collect various unorthodox weapons and items battling your way to Dr. Tongue's castle, whether it be in neighbors' yards, shopping malls, or a very scary hedge maze. Its comedic and exciting nature is very compelling, until the psycho chainsaw wielders kept me at bay for ages. This action-packed thriller was tons of fun to play, ever since I first saw it at a former friend's house. During 93-ish, who had a huge family and several teenage siblings. I was hooked almost instantly, shooting the guts out of the living dead and saving fellow neighbors and becoming their midnight snacks. And the soundtrack's just as ear-catching, though the neighbors can be hard to find at times before being eaten, and some of the levels' layouts can be complicated, hence the low rating. Erroneously, this is not the only one of the most unsung games, but it sprouted a sequel known as Ghoul Patrol just a few years later. Yet still, I wish Dismal Disney can get lesser obsessive with its live-action remakes, Marvel and Star Wars drugs, and perhaps give a care for the true fans to make a 3D remaster. Like with Shadowgate, I'd recommend it as one of the best nostalgic Halloween games out there. It's too bad it's never mentioned on any countdowns as of late. Hopefully, its long-dead fate can be changed anytime soon. The Bobcat Wooby barely leaps his way to the top 10. Ever since I was 5 years old, curiosity got the cat, pun intended. It was just one of those cutesy simple platformers, and I never cared he was a ripoff of Mario nor Sonic. I wasn't into RPGs anyway, so I welcomed him with open arms, much like Bonk, Arrow the Acrobat, and Awesome Possum. Thus was just the diamond in the rough and the irresistible escape I needed. And I found Bubsy and his one-liners to be hysterical and quotable. The levels were tons of fun, along with his flexible physics. The running gags were adorable. The woolies I found to be the unsung aliens despite looking like rabbits. The soundtrack's insanely addictive. The dazzling environments that rivals Widget. The collectathons of yarn balls and white shirts, the list goes on. It barely made it since the steep difficulty along with the strict time limits, the screen crunches, getting lost, and the long passwords can really put your head in a fog. Guides can definitely be the Claritin here. Just as suffocating as the obsessive competition without letting any minor platformer have the chance to shine. Aside from me and Toploader, everyone and their brother always hated him. Even my all-time favorite YouTuber. Although, much like Earthworm Jim, who had a similar fate with the sliding slope of failure, I'll always stick with the original, and their SNES counterparts. Accolade was incredible with this one-hit wonder, and I wish that Bubsy would have another promising installment like this one. If devs can just focus a hairball less on money and more on creativity, it can definitely go a long way. Another unsung platformer and interplay creation was the Lost Vikings. Just like Bubsy, Clayfighter, or even the Lemmings, This was also a very nice distraction when I was 5. As I've stated in my underappreciated list, you play as 3 Vikings, Eric, Balog, and Olaf, who are contrary to the usual barbarians, and they always happen to be lost in time on account of an intergalactic collector named Tomater, one of my chronokinetic picks. The trio of heroes must traverse through each level together in order to progress and eventually return to their neighboring homes. Eric the Swift, Balog the Bold, and Olaf the Shield have unique abilities that complement each other through thick and thin in each of the few tumultuous time periods. And this game perhaps has the most sweetest password system around. The music's addictive, the dialogue seems to be more enjoyable and funnier than the modern live games like Team Fortress, and they also went through an unfortunate fate as they'd been owned by the terroristic Activision Blizzard merger. If only Interplay still exists. This strategic puzzle platformer always keeps me coming back, and the challenges are a fun type of tough. It's just one of these treasures I always hold dearly since my ripe ages, and how I wish this can be replicated in the future before these shall decay in old age, combined with corruption and abandonment in which most franchises go through now. If these should fade into obscurity, may they do so with honor than part of the diseased. If there's any Kirby installment I'd highly commend, it's definitely Superstar. This was just my starting point getting into Kirby, ever since he became my main at the original Smash Bros. Up to Brawl. With a brand new and expansive system, HAL had more creative freedom to do whatever the heck it pleased. So, they had this insane idea of cramming up to 9 different games into one whole shape-shifting frenzy, counting 2 mini-games and the arena besides. Not only that, but for the first time ever, they'd enabled co-op gameplay as a second player can control Kirby's helper after copying certain abilities. I didn't get very far, hence the low rating. But unlike many entries, I've encountered this with a former step-cousin who owned that game, and I just had to rent it per se. Aside from Kirby Right Back At Ya, this was the only option I had at the time on playing Kirby, and introducing me to the series. Till I had its expansion on the DS one Christmas, and I'd highly recommend it over its predecessor. Still though, going by its namesake with an expansive plethora of game modes and several more copy abilities to experiment, and even inviting a friend to join in on the fun, it's no wonder this was a critical success to the Kirby franchise. I'd recommend it as the starting point to the Kirby series, and it's so hard to believe it's the second latest entry for the SNES before there was Kirby's Dream Land 3. It may have been released late for the Beijing Brick, but it's definitely worth the wait as one of the best Kirby games of all time. While this game is just a cheesy, simple platformer, it still holds some merit. Just like with other media involving dinosaurs like Jurassic Park, Land Before Time, even Barney at times. And this game isn't any different. I was probably around 5 or so, and I was really fascinated by this. Just like with either Mario or Luigi, depending on where the controller is plugged into the system, you play as either or, unless you decide to play co-op. But try your might on Super Mode, in which it enables them to beat each other and work uncooperatively like in Battletoads. You progress through the prehistoric era, and your objective is to conquer the mischievous cavemen and big bads to save the maidens, perhaps from being violated or something. This can also function as a sort of collectathon like other classic platformers, and finding secrets to empower your club with different projectiles and collecting more lives. As a fan of dinosaurs, I was thrilled to see different species, from pterodactyls to the T-Rex, a pod of ichthyosaur, an ankylosaurus, a T-Rex onyx? The thing is, though, you would occasionally get a pink gentle pterodactyl if you managed to hatch an egg with no enemies around. And as a dinosaur and animal lover, it always made me feel guilty on killing some of the dinosaurs like the pterodactyls, baby carnivores, and even the ankylosaurus, almost as if the cavemen were dominating Earth over the fauna despite their mission on saving the maidens. Perhaps it was the Red Devil making their kind do it. It made me have a hyperfixation with dinosaurs, even the cute little devil itself. And a crucial side note, much like with Clayfighter, this was tied as one of the first games I've ever beaten, despite having it on easy and eventually normal difficulty. At least you can customize it, which seems to be a rarity now. Data East did a decent job, and little did I know there was an NES predecessor in which it seemed a lot more basic. Nevertheless, whether single or co-op, I'd recommend to any new consumer as one of the earliest lenient games in the SNES's extensive inventory. Mario Paint just makes Mario and the SNES all the merrier. Ever since I first got this as a Christmas gift in 1992, it has been an instant favorite. Before there were such complex art programs for computers, Nintendo was kind enough to gift us its very own mouse and pad to create our basic pics, including your own icons, our very own songs, experience a lot of fun animations during erasures, and even have its own fly-swatting mini-game. It was just 10 times better than the atrocious art program LJN invented, and there were no false advertisements. The music, albeit limited due to the creation capabilities, is very memorable and fits perfectly, as if working at a children's studio, that I wish they could have used this game for elementary art classes. You can save up to 3 creations, unfortunately, and at the time, an artist's creations can be printed in a nearby department store. Not necessarily convenient, but it was definitely innovational for Nintendo's only mouse game.
Only one game used this!
So what? There should be more! It's about damn time it even finally spawned a sequel for the PC after about 2 decades, and everyone just loved its amazing music feature. I wish there was more successors for the PC like paint programs instead of just throwing money away like with asinine Adobe. If Nintendo can just focus less off its cash cows and let Mario Paint see the light of day again, after decaying for decades, then maybe they can improve and expand while also keeping things simple and not as tech-savvy. Before DeviantArt existed, Mario Paint was just the GOAT artsy platform, and may I wish that it have a fresh coat of paint after 2 decades in the dark. My all-time underappreciated Final Fantasy installment is here. As I've stated in my underrated games list, this was the entry-level RPG as it says on the tin of the whole juggernaut. Back in 1992, before we even had Ted Woolsey as the prize translator, this was Square of America's first ever project, and lo and behold, I strongly believe they succeeded, and I never agreed with the status quo always damning it. This definitely needs the praise it deserves from new and old players alike. We play as Benjamin, who has just evacuated from his doomed home, and his destiny entails we need to reunite the 4 elemental crystals at the Focus Tower. We meet some colorful characters, and it's limited to just Benjamin and only one ally to tag along. Very creative enemies too, even in different weak phases. Spells are often found in scrolls, rather than leveling up. There are no random encounters, as each enemy is engaged on the map, including being grouped in battlefields. We often interact with the environment like we would in Zelda. And the soundtrack consists of many bangers. A lot of people would often loathe it on account on how simple it is, but I've never cared about those complaints. Just keep in mind, this was the elementary RPG before Pokemon and the Mario and Luigi series existed. Even still, I'd highly commend it, as would Nintendo Capri Sun or the Happy Video Game Nerd. This wasn't really the first Final Fantasy game I got into. That honor goes to Final Fantasy II. In each game, even with 6, I'd seen my older sis play them. I would definitely recommend it to any new, young, or casual player to Final Fantasy, or with RPGs as a whole. And unlike most, it's a prime example of a spin-off done right. Not to mention it was Europe's first Final Fantasy game. We don't always need a tumultuous, sluggish AAA title to help us unwove. Just an amazing, fun, and relaxing experience. Something I can wholeheartedly associate with, and Mystic Quest delivers. If only that should get more positive reception and perhaps a sequel to make it shine bright as the sacred crystals themselves. It was difficult to pick just one Mortal Kombat installment. The entire trilogy was just too much. Anyway, Mortal Kombat 3 is usually my go-to retro game as far as the SNES goes. There are several factors in what made it stand out, whether it be the combatants, the overlooked dark aesthetics in which the reboot fails to replicate, since it cut back too much.
Reboot!
Or it's just the nostalgia talking. Despite the cheating AI or the limited roster, I never cared. I was always having way too much fun, even abusing the cool stuff. I can't be sure if it was either at home or one of my parents' shops, but everything got me hooked almost instantly. From the intense gore and violence, the pre-rendering graphics, the running mechanic increasing your momentum, to the introduction of animalities, to liking nearly everyone on the roster, including the awesome Lin Kuei cyborgs, replacing the ninjas, Nightwolf and all his Indian finesse, Sindel and her tragic backstory, unlike Woker Bros, which was actually done right for once, the colossal and destructive centaur Motaro, and of course the creepy stages combined with the apocalyptic setting as Shao Kahn makes his final attempt to conquer both Outworld and Earthrealm. The intense futuristic atmosphere is just synonymous with the series, and it's excruciatingly well, like with the Soul Chamber, the Pit 3, and the Unholy Church. Ever since I was 8, I definitely consider this as my favorite installment in the entire Juggernaut, next to Shaolin Monks. Hell, I even made my first ever MK fanfiction with these two. MK3 always feels like I'm back at home, where Midway was at its prime before the fatigue, and wokeness and snobs hardly existed. Even before Defenders of the Realm and the first movie came to be. I've mentioned this many times as the black sheep standing out from the casual herd, and you will see in several of my countdowns and my retrospective. And this was actually closure for me, as well as the end of a very nostalgic era. It was just downhill from there. Ah yes, the Enix Quintet Action Adventure Classic, in which I still find to be criminally underappreciated. By the time the 16-bit wars begun, developers were clobbered cutting back on religious themes. Unlike what we got in Japan, as we play as God, or rather the Master, saving the world from Satan, aka Tanzra, on his resurrection and second attempt. We're assisted by Angel, which, unlike many, I don't find her to be annoying. And much like the Guardian Legend, we have two play styles. The exhilarating platforming in which we smite many enemies, and the overhead sim levels in which we direct our followers to build towns, seal monster lairs, and perform different forces of nature, even being a dick at times. After defeating the region's bosses, we earn more supporters, which help level up the Master by increasing his health, while also finding magic scrolls for powerful spells, such as the outstanding Stardust. This was just another game I randomly saw my older sis play. Coincidentally at 4th place, since I'd encountered this when I was 4 years old. It always made me think I was a hero, rather than being into the religious crap, long before I was into Link. I've mentioned this early adventure in several countdowns now, and I've erroneously stated that while I still find it to be underrated, there's actually a remake, Actraiser Renaissance, specially made for the Switch. But it's been too complicated. And it wasn't until my teen years I'd finally rid of Tanzra after I found a walkthrough on Game Winners. And it was also bizarre growing up. I figured each Sonic hero should be assigned to a certain area on the island, like Tails for Northwall and Diligence, Knuckles for Eidos, etc. Sometimes it makes me think of other heroic miracle workers like Raiden, Fujin, or Lord Liu Kang, and whenever they're worshipped, they gain more strength to perform more miracles, or more destruction in the case of Shinnok with the Brotherhood of Shadow. Either way, I'd recommend it to some intermediate consumers, And I doubt this is for the faint of heart. It can be pretty tricky at times, believe me. With an outstanding soundtrack, incredible action, and especially with the power fantasy on being the hero, I just can't recommend this quintet classic enough. Especially, much like Evo, since it was before the greedy days when Square squandered Enix. And also, if you want to abuse swordsmen, put Master Protector in Smash Bros. For his sake! Usually I won't consider compilation games, but Kirby Superstar and this one in particular always cut the mustard. Super Mario All-Stars was just a retro gift that kept on giving. This is just the underappreciated bundle of joy, and one of the most overhated games in Mario's lifespan. Back in the 90s, Miyamoto was praised as a bona fide genius, with revolutionary ideas, and one of them was to remake each of the 8-bit platformers to 16-bit with more creative freedom and development, and also used Mario World as the base of the canvas. I was so glad each old dog from the trilogy was revamped and vastly improved upon with the aesthetics, sound, music, gameplay, all the bugs were fixed. Lost Levels was finally available internationally, and the best part is, not only is it an amazing installment combining 5 games in one, but you can actually save any time you want! This was just a damn lifesaver! If you're a casual or are just bad at games, All-Stars makes this tumultuous climb a hell of a lot smoothly, like climbing Mount Everest using ramps. And I'd said 5 games because back in 1992, soon after Mario Kart was completed, Miyamoto made this magnum opus. So, what happened to Mario World? Don't worry, All-Stars was remade, including that, just a few years later. Now you have all the classic Mario titles in one bundle, and I'd say it sold like hotcakes, even more than its solo cartridge. Better yet, it wasn't limited to just a measly 24 hours like their 3D counterparts. You should have known better, you greedy bastards! Quality, quantity, and availability, I'd highly commend it to every consumer, even if it happens to be their first game ever. This was just the 90s Mario goldmine that I wish other franchises can replicate, aside from what Sega can do. Second place goes to the famous rail shooter flyer known as Starfox, aka Starwing. Published by Nintendo in conjunction with Argonaut, Miyamoto's inspiration from the Thunderbirds was brought to life and became a colossal hit. The early adventures of Fox McCloud with his teammates Falco, Slippy, and Peppy took flight in their first ever war against the maniacal Andross, employed by General Pepper with his R-Wing prototypes as they saved Corneria and the Lilac system from utter annihilation, and even using the nostalgic puppet style. I wish they'd still have that. You play as the title role as Fox, blasting through various worlds and in deep space, while collecting power-up rings to refill your shield, enhance your lasers, and store up to 5 Nova Bombs, while also avoiding wind damage which detriments your arsenal and flight pattern. With up to 7 stages in each of the 3 difficulty routes, from air to space, and even through the bowels of hell, Miyamoto advanced Nintendo further, utilizing not just the Mode 7 capabilities, but also took advantage of 3D polygons by putting the Super FX chip into play, making it as a fun tech demo and knocking Sega out of the competition. And depending on your skill level, this game can instantly either be brutally backbreaking or smooth sailing. And of course, the music, sound effects, and automated voices are strangely addictive. No other Anthros have ever been this epic, before Guardians of the Galaxy became mainstream. Ever since I first encountered this at my parents' second shop when I was 6 years old, it was actually tough to get acquainted with. Not only this was a pleasant distraction, but there were so many skin-crawling factors. Like Drakkhen, there were several factors not meant for the sensitive, such as the crash scenes, the scary final boss, the tumultuous bosses, the slowdowns in frame rates with too much input and chaos. Even Andros himself gave me the willies. It also created a spark in me making early OCs, such as Patricia, a novice piloting the pedalcopter from Green Dog, or even a Fantron family. I even wrote my first parody with Venom as a level based on Rhythm as a Dancer by Snap. Even Fortuna was the catalyst for Starfox Adventures, making Dino spectacular and gave me Jurassic Park vibes. Unlike many consumers who consider 64 to be their first Star Fox game, I consider the OG. This game always seems to give you that power fantasy on being the ace pilot Fox, and this along with Tails made foxes as one of my all-time favorite animals. Maybe make that pipe dream possible with Fox and Tails sharing their universes. 1993 was insane with animals, and aside from Jurassic Park, Free Willy, The Sandlot, Homeward Bound, even Look Who's Talking Now, Star Fox was just one of the gold mines I'd stumbled upon, and is still one of my all-time favorite SNES games, despite its steep challenges, and make Nintendo soar to brand new heights. May Star Fox have its own film series one day. It shall always reach for the stars and beyond. Phew! We've now soared through 19 of my favorite 16-bit specimens of the Super Nintendo. Before we get to first place, let's have the honorable and dishonorable mentions play. For number 1, just like my preceding list, we need to look for a near-flawless victory that stretches the system to its limits. However, unlike the status quo, I don't agree at all when people automatically think of the predictable home runners like Mario World, Super Metroid, and not even Final Fantasy VI. No! Instead, this has been considered as the best superpower game that Nintendo has developed, and it only took just a year to make, which was... That's right. My favorite SNES game ever is Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Kong Quest. I know what you're probably thinking. What about the OG DKC? Actually, it was a very tough decision, but in terms of quality, atmosphere, music, and gameplay, not to mention no screen crunching, I think the successor should take the gold. We all know the gist. Diddy Kong, who's the predecessor's nephew, goes on a quest to save his uncle from the evil clutches of Captain K. Rool, the Kremlin dictator who used to steal the Kong's bananas. Assisted by his girlfriend Dixie, along with the Kong clan, and several animal buddies as they traverse through enemy territory of Crocodile Isle. Not to mention it takes place soon after the original, as it starts where the final boss took place at Gangplank Leon. This seems familiar. I think DKC2 actually took inspiration from Mortal Kombat 2, as this was also a sequel taking place in enemy territory as the Emperor challenges the heroes as an act of revenge and to rescue some doomed hostages. This doesn't feel not only as a sequel, but sort of an expansion too. After a year in development, it went above and beyond the limitations the OG had, including no screen crunching and a faster pace. Even having twice the content such as more collectathons involving Krem coins, DK tokens, banana tokens, and even its own version of the Lost World before Jurassic Park did theirs. If only the game doesn't have to restart your collectibles once you load a file, though. There are also more Kongs within the clan that can assist you, but often at the cost of those common banana tokens, including newcomers such as Wrinkly and Swanky, or veterans like Funky and Cranky, who's more irritating than the last game. The animal buddies also had quite an improvement, granting each one to have more of their signature abilities, like Ramby's and Ungard's charges, or while riding Squawks, or Quawks, as they spit nuts, or for the newcomers such as Rattly and his super jumps, and of course the fan favorite Squitter, with his amazing web projectiles and platforms. You also get to become these critters while you enter their barrels as well. Too bad Espresso and Winky can't join in. And I really love the pirate themes they gave to each of the Kremlings. It was just synonymous. It was thanks to that and Diddy Kong Racing that made Kremlings as one of my all-time favorite villains. And even may have the chance to break away from K. Rool's neglect and become more of themselves. They're the most variable and adaptable villains ever conceived. The environments are vast and they never seem to be replicated, unlike in Mario World. And most of them have become my all-time favorite environmental levels. Roller coasters, icy caves, ship lockers, beehives, volcanoes, pirate ships, swamps, forests, thorn bushes, gulches, castles. God! So many types! I love it! The soundtrack's damn near perfection. I can listen to almost every track, excepting the overrated Sticker Brush Symphony. Even as soon as it's booted up, It gets you pumped for a brand new adventure awaiting you. What's even more convenient is that DKC2 seems to be the only one of its kind that never changes momentum, as you only play as two light and nimble Kongs without a clunky heavy tank slowing you down. I wish it could stay that way, especially when steering animal buddies or swimming. And of course, lest we forget the champion herself, Dixie Kong! This was the perfect example of a competent, versatile Nintendo female protagonist, as her ponytail is an awesome weapon and hoverer. She actually gave Cranky a huge FU as he degraded her. And it was just the main reason she was my main. She was the standout before Lara Croft and Shantae. If only Sakurai would give her a lot more credit as a potential smasher, instead of abusing the hell out of Echo Fighters and pathetic swordsmen. No wonder she was high up on my 12 female characters. Even having an alternate ending just to make the game more sweeter. Probably Rareware's first. Sequels are usually meant to expand and exceed their originals. And with all those aforementioned reasons, with only 1 year from its prequel, Diddy's Conquest is just the golden ticket and my most favorable SNES game of all time since my tween years. I'm the Ecron Rider, and Diddy's Conquest, much like the Guardian Legend, just demonstrates the system's capabilities and surpasses them without any loss of quality, despite the occasional slow frame rates. It is damn near perfection, and it's a simple and fun platformer open to everyone. I'd even recommend as the first SNES game that it doesn't need cheap difficulty and mundane grinding to be the best. Thanks for watching, guys. Sorry this vid has been postponed. The 150 subscriber special got me sidetracked, and I'd been hit with a cold. I was originally going to have it done by late February, until this unexpectedness. At least I never lie about my progress like a crazy content creator I know, whom shouldn't be around anymore. You probably already know if you've seen my vlogs. Actually, make that 2. Hopefully the next installment and schedule should go well for my Sega games. See you guys later. Ecron Rider out.